Hi, it's Christine Beadsworth again, and this is part 3 of the Synchronized dance of the Issachar Company. As I mentioned in part 1 of this series, I received a vision while reading the words that I shared with you, and I now want to share that with you. I saw the temple building, complete with the outer court, holy place, and the Holy of Holies. There was a very visible trail of manna scattered like a path through the outer court and into the holy place. It was wide and abundant in the outer court and became narrower as it passed through the holy place. By the time it got to the altar of incense, there were only a few pieces of manna on the ground, and it ended there. It reminded me of a trail deliberately laid to show people what way to go. It is almost as if the Father had directed the pieces of manna, revelation light portions from the bread of life, be scattered to show his people how to find the way to the ark of his presence. Furthermore, the Spirit showed me that this trail of white is like the walk down the aisle for the bride, and specifically is manna provided to lead the bridal company through the temple to the place of marriage, oneness and consummation, essentially up ahead dwelling in the Holy of Holies face to face with the bridegroom. So the altar of incense is the last station the bride of Christ visits before full union. It is a place of full surrender, of forgetting your people and your Father's house, of separation from and separation unto. After this comes name change, station change, change of dwelling place, and receiving of full wedding covenant privileges, rights and responsibilities. Being a wife is very different from being a fiancée. In a holy covenant relationship, the bride doesn't see the bedchamber of the groom before the ceremony. You may have walked with him, talked with him, danced with him, but consummation is a very different matter. Consequently, this threshold of the Holy of Holies is also a place of sifting. The altar of incense is full of crushed incense that is set alight, but there is also a portion of incense that is crushed extra fine and set apart or appointed to be carried by the high priest into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, the feast which is also known by the name Face to Face. Concerning the manna, I was reminded by the Holy Spirit of a prophetic experience I had on the 6th of May 2020, which was, not coincidentally, the day I also received the word concerning judgment on New York, when I saw the apple with the big bruise. In the prophetic experience, I was taken again in a vision to the room where the manna is formed in heaven. I had visited it before, and this time I noticed that the level of golden heavenly light in the atmosphere was significantly less, and there was not as much manna in heaps on the floor of the room. After commenting on this, the Father said the time of receiving daily manna by just picking it up from what has been already scattered along the path daily was coming to an end, and that the time of experiencing the promised land of true union was at hand. Historically, once the people of God crossed over into the new dispensation and entered the promised land, the manna ceased falling. And this happened on the day after they celebrated Passover. Joshua 5 verse 10 says, "And the Israelites encamped at Gilgal, and they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. And on that same day they ate the stored grain of the land, unleavened cakes, and parched grain. And the manna ceased on the day after they ate of the produce of the land. And the Israelites had manna no more, but they ate of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year." Notice that during this transition celebration of Passover, they received both manna in the morning and then unleavened bread made from ground stored grain, and they ate of the new grain that had passed through the fire. So they had a threefold feast. All this grain that made the unleavened bread and the new grain parched in the fire was grown in the promised land, It was not carried with them from Egypt or obtained in the wilderness of preparation, because they didn't plant crops when they went through the wilderness. God just fed them daily. At this Passover, this pivotal Passover, they receive nutrition from those already rooted and growing in the new dispensation. Not only that, but the phrase stored grain is the Hebrew word abur, A-B-U-R, meaning past or stored. In the Ark of the Covenant beyond the veil in the temple, there's stored manna, stored bread of heaven in a golden vessel. The threefold feast on this pivotal Passover includes an hors d'oeuvre of that which has been stored up in a golden vessel company dwelling in the hidden place of his presence, with the purpose of unveiling fully at God's appointed time. Now we had a pivotal Passover in the year 2020. 2020 is a transition year, and this year we had a pivotal Passover. The people born in the wilderness had never eaten unleavened bread, as no crops were grown in the 40 years of wilderness wanderings. How delicious it must have tasted to them. This threefold feast contains nourishment and revelation never encountered by the eyes and ear of the current generation of saints. God is doing something new. These ones who are termed stored grain are seasoned saints. They grew, bore fruit, in a past season, which is now being provided as prepared grain at this Passover time, this passing over time. Seasoned saints, set apart and holy, who have been saturated in the presence of God continually away from the eyes of the activity of the holy place. So we see that these are forerunner saints, those who have been sent ahead, who have been successfully tested by fire and found to be vessels of gold, carrying within revelation and understanding that is nutritious for the bridal company to consume. They do not carry the leaven of the Pharisees or the leaven of Herod. They are bearing the leaven of the kingdom. Abur comes from the root word abar, meaning to transition, to cross over, to enter into a covenant, to pass beyond, to emigrate, to impregnate. There is a heavenly seed in the stored grain of the promised land that you can conceive from. As the bridal company enters into a marriage covenant and transitions to married life, consummation takes place, and seed within the stored grain is released into spiritual wombs, and the season of great fruitfulness lies ahead. They also ate grain parched in the fire. This phrase, parched in the fire, refers to the practice of testing the newly ripened grain of the current season to see if it is in the Aviv phase. You can read more about this in the series on the first fruits barley, which was written at the end of 2018 into 2019. There are about 4 or 5 in that series. So do read that if you're new to this blog. This Passover takes place at the time of the barley harvest in Canaan. If barley is Aviv, the grains can pass through the fire without being consumed by the flames and vaporizing. The heat only serves to harden the outside of the grain and make it fit for consumption. This Aviv grain represents saints who are already rooted and grounded in the promised land, but who are being tasted for the first time. New ministries, new prophets, fresh from their season of preparation, who come to impart great and mighty things that the bridal company has not known. They are new faces, new writers, new speakers, the unknown ones, just like John the Baptist, who showed up after about 28 years of obscurity at the Jordan River. I'm sure many people who came to the river to hear him had never heard his name, and his family had been wiped out by Herod's soldiers. So they would have said, who is this that's saying these amazing things? Song of Songs 3 verse 6 says, who is this that comes gliding out of the wilderness like stately pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh, frankincense, and all the fragrant powders of the merchant? The word for parched grain, the word parched, comes from a root word meaning despised or lightly esteemed. So we know that these new Aviv vessels through whom the Lord ministers nourishment, whom he calls parched grain at this crossing point, have walked in the sufferings of Jesus. He was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, one from whom men hid their faces, and they considered him of no worth. That's written in Isaiah 53 verse 3. These ones who are parched grain have been refined by trial, tested, and found useful to the Master in this new season. Notice also that the unleavened cakes and the parched grain were provided just before the end of the daily manna season. What the forerunners share at this juncture is nourishment that prepares for the new season ahead. Passive reception of daily spiritual nourishment would be ending. No more daily spiritual breakfast easily gathered on wakening. The fruit of Canaan is a different matter. Yes, they conquered giants and possessed fields and cities of the pagan people, but those crops still had to be harvested, passed through preparation procedures necessary to make them table ready. There was a lot of physical labor connected with accessing the fruit of the promised land. In a spiritual sense, this can be likened to eating meat instead of drinking milk. Meat must be cooked, cut up, and chewed, mouthful by mouthful, to glean the nourishment it contains. Milk, in contrast, can just be swallowed straight from the cow. In the same way, the revelation imparted in the holy place is depicted by the 7 flames of the continually burning menorah and by the table of showbread, whose cakes were dished out every Sabbath to the serving priests. The olives had already been harvested and pressed to produce the pure oil. The flour had already been ground and the bread baked. The holy place is the place of readily accessible revelation truth, and some natural light permeates its interior through the doorway to the outer court. But the threshold marked by the hanging place of the veil announces a vast change of season. Here, the trail of easily picked up manna ends. Beyond this threshold is the speaking place, the Holy of Holies, where there is no natural light. It is the place of face to face, the glory realm, and only a portion of all the crushed incense makes it beyond the threshold. I want you to think of this in terms of where we are and what's going on in the world right now. At the moment, it's very easy to wake up in the morning, to pick up your phone, to scroll through your emails, to read your daily word for the day that you've subscribed to go to different websites, see what the different prophetic words are saying. Feed yourself from the manna that has been scattered by others who have placed it as a trail, trying to guide you to the Holy of Holies. But a season is coming in the earth where there will be no more daily manna, where the internet will go down, where the Christian YouTube channels are going to be removed and censored, where the Christian blogs are going to be shut down. Severe persecution is going to break out against the true church of Jesus Christ. And therefore, there will not be daily manna to pick up from the mouths of other saints, from ministries left, right, and center. At that juncture, you have to move to the speaking place. You have to know your Father's voice for yourself. You have to be in intimacy with the bridegroom. You have to be able to feed yourself, to get meat out of the word, to chew it, cut it up, digest it, and get nourishment out of the word for yourself. That day is very soon going to be upon us. And those Christians who are used to being bottle fed, who are used to eating pureed baby food, that other seasoned saints have digested and prepared and laid out, are going to get very hungry. There is going to be a famine for the word of the Lord in the earth. And you have to press in. You have to press in this little bit of time of preparation we have left in this year of 2020. You have to press in, if you haven't done so already, and learn how to access food for yourself in this year of 2020, this transition year, this Passover feast year. There has been a threefold feast laid on for the saints and the bridal company. A lot, two-thirds of the feast, the threefold feast, comes from those who are already rooted in the promised land of inheritance, which is intimacy with Him in whom all the treasures of wisdom are laid up. Two-thirds of the feast made available of the true word of God in this year comes from vessels, either new vessels that are fresh on the scene, or seasoned ministers and vessels of Christ who have passed through the fire, have been refined and found to be useful to the Master, have been providing nourishment in this Passover year, in this transition year. And all that two-thirds of the threefold feast is calling people to come deeper, to come higher, to press in further, to brace yourselves for what is coming. There's a storm coming. There's a lot of hurdles that are going to be done. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be persecution. All of this has been nourishment to prepare the saints, to brace themselves, to play the man, to be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. You may not have realized this is what has been going forth in this year of 2020 up till now. Rosh Hashanah is on the 18th of September 2020. Then the year 5781 begins, and the transition year is over. It's now July the 14th when I'm releasing this audio. We basically have 2 months left to prepare ourselves, body, soul, and spirit, for what the Spirit of God has been telling us lies ahead. Go to the Lord, saints. Go to the Lord, precious bride of Christ. Ask Him for wisdom. Don't lean on your own understanding. Ask Him, and daily what you need to do to prepare, and be obedient to the letter, even if you don't understand. Because He wants to protect His remnant. He wants to protect His bridal company. But we have to look to Him first for wisdom. We have to look to Him first for revelation light. We cannot look to the world to tell us how to prepare. May the Lord help you all.